Ezra Taft Benson.
President Hunt, Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This is a signal honor, a very great pleasure, and a challenging responsibility. In addition to the honor of this great audience, I am doubly honored to learn that the beloved leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, President David O. McKay, is viewing this program with his lovely companion in their apartment at the Hotel Utah. God bless them. They are true patriots. Humbly and gratefully, I stand before you, grateful for patriots such as you, humbled by the magnitude of the task before us. I speak to you as a fellow citizen of the United States of America, deeply concerned about the welfare of our beloved country. I am not here to tickle your ears, to entertain you. I will talk to you frankly and honestly. The message I bring is not a happy one, but it is the truth. And time is always on the side of truth. As the German philosopher Goethe said, truth must be repeated again and again, because error is constantly being preached round about. I realize that the bearer of bad news is always unpopular. As a people, we love sweetness and light, especially sweetness. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that every mind must make a choice between truth and pose. Those who will learn nothing from history are condemned to repeat it. This we are doing in the Americas today. George Washington stated, "Truth will ultimately prevail where there are pains taken to bring it to light." To bring the truth to light is our challenge, this day and every day. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Returning recently from 2 years abroad has caused me to reflect seriously on recent trends and present conditions in our beloved country. I am shocked and saddened at what I find. I am sorry to say that all is not well in so-called prosperous, wealthy, and powerful America. We have moved a long way and are now moving further and more rapidly down the soul-destroying road of socialism. The evidence is clear, shockingly clear, for all to see. With our national prestige at or near an embarrassing all-time low, we continue to weaken our domestic economy by unsound fiscal, economic, and foreign aid policies which corrupt our national currency. Ever-increasing centralization of power in the federal government in Washington, D.C., is reducing our local and state governments to virtual federal field offices, while weakening individual initiative, enterprise, and character. With the crass, unconstitutional usurpation of power by the executive branch of the federal government, anti-spiritual decisions of the Supreme Court, all apparently approved by a weakly submissive rubber-stamped Congress, the days ahead are ominously frightening. Surely, certainly, it behooves patriotic citizens such as you to meet together to seriously consider present conditions in our beloved nation. It is imperative that American citizens become alerted and informed regarding the threat to our welfare, happiness, and freedom. No American is worthy of citizenship in this great land who refuses to take an active interest in these important matters. All we hold dear as a great Christian nation is at stake. Another recent development has been the call for national unity. I believe there needs to be unity in our land, but it must not be a blind, senseless, irresponsible unity. It should not be a unity just for the sake of unity. It needs to be a unity built on sound principles. We Americans have strayed far from sound principles, morally, constitutionally, and historically. It has been getting us into a quagmire of trouble all over the world, and especially here at home. Americans at the grassroots level have sensed that their way of life is being threatened. During the last several years, there has been a rising tide of resistance to the prevailing political trend. Compromises with communism abroad and flirtations with socialism at home have stirred up opposition in both political parties. If this has led to sound constitutional principles on which we can unite, there would be no virtue in calling for unity to support certain legislation if the majority of Americans were opposed to it. And the fact that both Democrats and Republicans in Congress have at times resisted certain legislation shows that the executive branch of the government may get out of step with the people. I believe the American people know what they want. It would appear that the people want their civil rights safeguarded, but not a destruction of states' rights. The farmers want opportunity for reasonable income security, but not agricultural dictatorship security. Parents want better school for their children, but not a federal subsidy leading to control of the teachings and textbooks as well as the ideologies of the children. People want sound pay-as-you-go spending with a balanced budget, not reckless spending and tax cuts with an unbalanced budget. If there is a need for urban renewal, people want it under local direction, not under the red tape of Washington bureaus armed with confiscatory powers over property. People want the development of power dams, but not the strangulation of privately owned power companies, which have proven far more efficient and economical than utilities run by the government. In other words, there are some legitimate functions and services which the federal government can and should provide. But those who want the federal power to exceed the authority delegated to it by the Constitution will be resisted both by Democrats and Republicans. This is what is happening in some limited areas today. May the trend increase. And anyone who tries to equate this love of constitutional principles as meaning hatred of our national leaders is using Goebbels-style deception. History has already demonstrated that conservative opposition to national leaders was not hate, but an attempt to do them a favor. Let me give you some examples. Was it hate when General Albert C. Wedemeyer pleaded with General Marshall and President Truman to reverse their policy before they lost China? Was it hate when Whittaker Chambers tried to warn President Roosevelt in 1939 that Alger Hiss had been giving the Soviet Union more espionage data than any other member of the Washington spy network? Was it hate when J. Edgar Hoover tried to warn President Truman that Harry Dexter White was a member of the Soviet spy apparatus and was doing great danger to the nation as Assistant Secretary of the Treasury? Was it hate when I went to the Secretary of State under President Eisenhower and pleaded with him not to support the communist Fidel Castro? Was it hate when I urged the President of the United States to go to the aid of the brave freedom fighters in Hungary? Was it hate when the Democratic senator from Connecticut, Thomas Dodd, pleaded for 2 years with the President not to support the United Nations bloodbath against the free people of Katanga? Is it hate when distinguished military leaders advise that an all-out effort could end the Vietnam struggle almost overnight? This list of acts by well-meaning citizens who want and wanted to prevent their presidents from making serious mistakes could be extended at length, but they would all illustrate the same point. History will show that many terrible mistakes occurred because the advice of these well-informed and well-meaning citizens was not heeded. Therefore, I repeat, this kind of resistance to a national leader is rooted in love and respect, not hate. Regardless of which political party is in power, you do not want to see your president make a serious blunder. You don't want him to lose China. You don't want him to allow the enemy agents to make fools of us. You don't want him to lose Cuba. You don't want him to suffer the humiliation of a Bay of Pigs disaster, or allow a Soviet Gibraltar to be built 90 miles from our shores. Every one of these events, which have been so disastrous and which have destroyed freedom for hundreds of millions of our allies, could have been prevented. And the voices of those who tried to warn Washington of what was coming cannot be attributed to hate. It has been out of a love for our country and respect for our leaders that the voice of warning has been raised. What causes one to wonder is why these warnings were not carefully considered and acted upon. Why is it that men in high places in government, regardless of party, have been deceived? I am convinced that a major part of the cause can be justly laid at the door of the socialist communist conspiracy, which is led by masters of deceit who deceive the very elect. J. Edgar Hoover put it well when he said, quote, "I would have no fears if more Americans possessed the zeal, the fervor, the persistence, and the industry to learn about this menace of red fascism. I do fear for the liberal and progressive who have been hoodwinked and duped into joining with the communists," end quote. Therefore, let those who call for unity and the elimination of hate be sure they are not merely trying to silence the friends of freedom. These are who respect their leaders and resist them only when it is felt they are headed for a catastrophe. What patriotic American would wish to stand silent if he saw the president verging on a blunder because of bad advice or a mistaken judgment of the facts? I believe one of the most serious mistakes a president could make would be to weaken the Constitution. From the time I was a small boy, I was taught that the American Constitution is an inspired document. I was also taught that the day will come when the Constitution will be endangered and hang, as it were, by a single thread. I was taught that we should study the Constitution, preserve its principles, and defend it against any who would destroy it. To the best of my ability, I have always tried to do this. I expect to continue my efforts to help protect and safeguard our inspired Constitution. Some 2 years ago, however, a critic from Washington, D.C., claimed that a person who serves in a church capacity should not comment on such matters. He charged that the separation of church and state requires that church officials restrict their attention to the affairs of the church. I, of course, also believe that the institutions of church and state should be separated. But I also do not agree that spiritual leaders cannot comment on basic issues which involve the very foundation of American liberty.